Well, welcome back to Monkey Wrench Engineering on what is probably the final installment of the rocket-based tutorials. We are playing with ISRU, in situ resource utilization. I've been threatening to show you how to do a science crusade on the satellites to answer all of your science issues in career, and this is it. We have built a $250,000 fund ship that we will really be getting minimal funds back on initially. We only have one contract out on Minmus that's paying anything. That's not the point of this. We've got 1.6 or 1.8 million in funds. This is to answer all of your science needs for the foreseeable future. Once we get it into the sunshine, I'll actually show you the ship and go over it with you. You will need to build a launcher system that'll loft 50 tons into Kerbin orbit. In my case, that involved 9 orange tanks and 4 of the big engines. And that was it. It was a fairly easy launch. We're currently on a burn to insert into orbit around the moon, where we're going to start. This little nuclear-powered lander has in situ resource utilization systems aboard, which means it can refuel itself. You're going to find that in the late game, refueling is tremendously important to everything you do. Before we even get in the sun, though, let's do what we always do and tweak our encounter. We are going to do this a little differently than usual, in that we're actually going to want a polar orbit. This is a monster. It's a very heavy ship at 50 tons. How you design it is sort of up to you. The core of it being it's nuclear powered. This one, in fact, uses 3 nerve engines. So there's lots of liquid fuel aboard. Even that stock tank there has had all the oxidizer dumped out of it, and it only has liquid fuel in it. We're using the best solar panels we have available because this is going to require a lot of power. As you'll notice in the middle here is a large, very mechanical looking piece of machinery. That is the in situ resource utilization unit, the ISRU unit. That is what allows you to convert ore into liquid fuel, into oxygen, or into monopropellant. This ship only carries liquid fuel and monopropellant in a small tank here. But this can make all 3. So long as it has, you'll notice around here we'll spin this so you can actually see. Mounted on this side of the ship is a drill. You have to have a drill to be able to actually mine things. You'll see we have a variety of science equipment on board too. We'll be going over that in some detail. But in addition to the drill and the ISRU, you also need an ore tank to store the ore in as you're processing. Processing does make heat. Not really an issue on a nuclear-powered ship like this. We already have radiators built in. That'll help dissipate that heat. And we'll need lots of power, thus the big panels, and considerable battery packs. We have battery packs here, there, and everywhere on this ship. Importantly, the crew of this ship is Sonlok Kerman, a scientist, and Valentina Kerman, our pilot. We're sending both of them along. Stop this thing spinning because it's annoying me. We're sending both of them along, Valentina so she can get some more piloting experience, and Sonlok because we're going to do multiple science runs all over the moon. He's going to be resetting the science equipment pretty continuously and storing the science in the capsule. I'm not going to show you landing after landing after landing with this. I'll show you one in a refueling, and then you'll understand how you can do this as many times as you want to. Upon finishing our run, I will cut ahead and show how you store this at a research facility to do the data refining for more science. We'll be taking our science back to Kerbin to the Orbital Science Station here. This Orbital Science Station has in fact been waiting for someone to show up ever since I put it in orbit. It's a very basic station. Just got some solar panels, a lot of battery packs, and 2 scientists aboard who are ready to start crunching our data for us. It does have a docking port so that we can eventually take the scientists off when we get tired of them being here. But as I said, that will be after we collect our science. So for now, let's go back to our hopper, get to the moon, and do some work. Part of the joy of mining is that you do need to figure out where the mineable resources are on a planet. Thus this. This is the Mark 700 survey scanner. It will allow you to measure in a general way where ore concentrations are on a planet. It's not super detailed. There are better scanners higher in the tech tree that give you much better data, but it's what we need to get a basic understanding of where ore is located. So let's execute the next node and get to the moon and start doing some work. This scanner only functions properly in a polar orbit. That's why we're entering a polar orbit. It will also allow us to enter to do our initial landing, I think, at the pole, which will be interesting. Then we will do some secondary landings elsewhere. This burn is actually pretty mild, 272 meters per second burn, so we're doing great. This 50-ton ship by itself has fully fueled about 5,300, 5,400 delta V, which is sufficient to land and take off actually multiple times on the moon without refueling. And since it has the capability of refueling itself, it can stay out here as long as you need it to. Now that we're in a polar orbit, and perform an orbital survey. It takes it a minute to complete. You'll notice it's uploading the data. You do have to make sure you've got enough, you've got an antenna and enough power to do so. And now the moon has lots of purple stuff on it. That's showing where ore is. You can raise or lower the cutoff to display concentrations of ore, like 60% concentrations of ore. There's far fewer places than there were at 10%. Those are all excellent spots to land. 70% concentrations are actually quite rare. There's only a few. So those are the highest ore concentrations. We're going to land at the pole initially, though. That's good enough. We'll abort node, remove all nodes, and have Valentina take over, going into a retrograde position. Burning off some more velocity. We are showing, actually we're showing absolutely no surface detail. There we go. Why are we spinning? Oh no, we're right over the pole. Right over the pole's a bad thing. Right over the pole can cause all sorts of navigational issues. You'll notice this star-shaped spot, that's where all the textures are meeting. We are literally landing right on the South Pole. That's going to make this interesting. Showing 27 meters. Oh, this is a really bad hill. This may be bad. And we're going to turn our CS on just in case. 6.5, 0.4, 0.3, 0.2, cut engines, and down. Ooh, not a great landing, but hey, that'll do. Oh yeah, that's a. You'll see we're actually on a very severe slope, so that was actually kind of lucky. And if we'd been a little bit that way, we'd have fallen into a canyon, which would have been fatal. But hey, it worked. We'll F5 there. We don't need surface info, and for the moment, we don't need delta V. So hooray. The reason for making this ship is we're going to do science all over both the moon and Minmus. So we've taken every piece of science gear that we have with us, including the brand new and fabulous gravioli detector, which makes tons of science, both in orbit and on the ground. But what we're going to do now is refuel. We haven't used a ton of fuel, but why not keep it full? Refining fuel takes two things: power and time. We are in the polar area, so the sun is low on the horizon, but we should be fine. But with your panels out, you'll want to deploy your drill, which you'll notice drills itself conveniently into the bedrock. Oh, speaking of, we actually included a surface scanning module, which shows that we have ore surface of 5.16% average. That's kind of not terribly good, but that means we've got enough ore to actually mine. So we'll start the surface harvester. It is harvesting really terribly low amounts of ore, but it is harvesting. That ore dumps into this ore tank, which you'll notice has 0.01 tons of ore in it. So we're going to accelerate time. Might as well fill that tank. Tank's full. Okay. Electrically, we're doing okay, but when we do this, we'll probably flat the batteries. We'll start. We're going to right-click on the ISRU, the Convertotron 250. We are going to start making liquid fuel. Start ISRU liquid fuel. Click. It is now converting ore into liquid fuel. Not at a terribly fast rate, but it is doing it. So we'll accelerate time again. Yeah, I thought so. That'll flat the batteries and we'll have to restart the drill. If the battery's flat, well, that's interesting. Surface harvester does think it's going. Are we just generating that little ore? Oh, this is a terrible spot. We are, yeah, it's still filling fuel. It's just generating so little ore we don't see it. But you'll notice our fuel is going up, and now we're full. We can fill that ore tank up and take that with us. There are spots you might want to do that. It does unbalance your ship because you have this great heavy bag of rocks on one side. So you'll stop your drill and retract your drill. Frankly, we don't need to be lugging a bunch of rocks around with us. This has plenty of fuel as is. That does tend to unbalance us some, so we'll, just jettison that. So in the course of a few days sitting on the moon, you know what we could have done? Oh, that was silly. I was going to say we could have refilled our monopropellant too by using the ISRU to do that, and I dumped all our ore before I did that, so okay, fine. Let's refill that. So your ISRU, by the way, will not stop automatically. You want to stop liquid fuel, start monoprop, and start your surface harvester. Your monoprop's at 262 of 290. Your monoprop is now 290, and we're filling up the ore tank again, so let's retract the drill. Jettison the tank contents, and we're good to go. All fuel full, and the ship is ready to take off and go elsewhere and do more science. This ship and this configuration can now do multiple hops to every biome on the moon that we haven't visited and do science there. Sonlock can store the science in the ship here, and once you've literally piled together all the science you can possibly want, we're going to take it back to the mobile research lab. Rather than dragging you guys through the 85,000 hops I'm going to make with this, I'm actually going to take this back to the lab and show you that. Okay, so we are now back in orbit of Kerbin by our orbital science station. We've just done a simple rendezvous. We're not going to bother docking because docking doesn't work to transfer science anyway. So Sonlock, our scientist, will EVA and turn their lights on so they can see. Sonlock will right-click the capsule and take data. You'll have much more than this because you'll go many more places than I did. Grab on. And you can store experiments in the lab, which is excellent. Now, in the lab, if Sonlock doesn't drift off of this, there we go. In the lab, no, are we in the lab? We are in the lab. We can review data. We now have 7 pieces of data in here. Well, these are great. This is the science we picked up. The EVA report from the moon's polar lowlands has process and lab data module 32 data. Let's go ahead and do that. So it will grind its way forward, loading that. And you'll note it takes electricity to do that. That's why you've got to have robust electricity systems on these. Excellent. That data is in. It's the next one. Oh, that mystery goo. Let's load that 40 units of data. Now this lab has a maximum data storage capacity of 500. So keep that in mind. We'll get that 48 points from the atmosphere. And we did atmosphere pressure scan of the moon. 0 atmosphere pressure. But anyway, you're loading these data, and you'll want to load as close as you can to 500 data. We're leaving our scientists here because we're going to actually pick up the science data after they download. And we're going to return that to, well, we would be returning that to Kerbin. We won't because this isn't a lander, and we would actually land these guys by running a small shuttle rocket up to pick them up and take them back, because this Explorer you're going to use over and over again for a variety of missions. That puts 452 science in the lab. That's excellent. So we'll keep data, keep data, keep data, keep data, keep data, keep data, keep data. So we have 450 in there. So unlock, take data. Okay, he's got the experiments back in his pocket. Or she, whatever the Kerbin situation is. I cannot see because there's a ship in my way. So where is our lander? There it is. We'll take Sonlock back over to the lander so that he can hang out and wait for the shuttle bus to come up and give him a lift. To be honest, he probably won't do that. I'll take this crew out. They've still got enough Delta V in this thing, even after returning to Kerbin, to go out to Minmus, make a landing, and start doing science there, which they will do. Okay, so he now has all the science back aboard this ship for eventual delivery to Kerbin. Meanwhile, over in the lab, we are in the shady side of the planet. Let's actually get around back to the sun. We're going to want the power. Okay, there we go. I want the electricity for this. So the lab has 2 scientists aboard. We've got data of 452. They're going to research at a rate of 3 science per day. Doesn't sound like much, but it actually turns out that it's a lot, especially while you're doing other things. You start research on them, they're now researching. It does take power to do this. I don't believe it takes so much that we'll be in trouble going through the shadow of the planet, but let's find out. The science lab does max out at 500 science stored from the research. Once that reaches maximum, you'll transmit that back to Kerbin and then continue to research as long as you have data. Now it is going to actually flat the batteries in the shadow side. But it will pick up automatically again once it comes back out. So you can ignore them and leave them researching here, and every now and then check back and see how much science they've ground out. So your research team is now going great guns. The science is, depending on the level of your scientists, you get more science from the data. It looks like with our crew we're getting trying to actually tell here what our rate of return is. It looks like we're getting 3 or 4 to 1, so this should grind out like 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 science off that 500 data. It's a little hard to tell just watching the numbers click over, but that's what it looks like. So the exchange rate's very good. A point of data is worth more than a point of science by a factor of probably 3 or 4. The more so depending on how skilled your scientists are. So that's it. Between this ship, or whatever variation of this ship you build, and a science station, your science worries are over. This does make any contracts you need to complete on the Moon or Minmus extremely easy. Again, this ship can be used with a transfer stage at Ike, at Jewel. You can go to Eve with this. You can land on Gilly with this. I wouldn't recommend trying to land on Eve with it. But there's very few places you can't go with a ship like this. And it is big, it is heavy, it is low tech, but it does the job quite well. And it will allow you to buy all the really fun, fancy science to open up all the neat toys for playing with later on, including things like space planes. So basically, that's going to be it for the guide to the KSP 1.0.5 tutorials. I think this gets you everything you need to open the entirety of the tech tree and to make all the money you're going to possibly need. That being the case, when we do come back with another tutorial, I've had a request to do a basic introduction to aerodynamics and planes. Planes are probably the hardest thing in KSP for most people, and that sounds like something that might make some fun videos with lots of crashing. And so maybe we'll come back and do that. But again, this is Mike for Monkey Wrench Engineering, and thank you for watching. And I hope you learned something. Have a great time, and don't explode any more than you absolutely have to. Bye bye.